Tonight I'm here to address you about the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Acts, or FERPA. The intent of this law was to allow parents to access their children's academic records and shield them from those that do not have a legitimate interest in those records, not for schools to hide behind. I've been requesting to see a video of an incident my son was involved in November 20th, 2014 at the high school during lunch. I requested to see the video of the incident because I do have a right to see it. And I've been told multiple stories as to what actually happened. I know for a fact that I've been lied to about the events that day. I know for a fact that school faculty members were sitting at the next table, including the assistant principal, Don Jarrett, who lied about what took place, although he would not admit being in the lunchroom at the time, and he stated that none of the adults saw anything. The principal at the high school, Kim Siegler, Kevin Dobard, and Patrick Atwater have all denied my request to see the video citing FERPA. I contacted the Family Policy Compliance Office, which oversees FERPA, for guidance on this issue, and their response was that parents of all students involved could view the video. Now, if you want a copy, and you requested a copy, then you would require consent of all parties involved. Now, considering this position taken by the administration, it's ironic that FERPA was violated when I received 21 pages of another student's record with my child's records on December 3rd. And also, if that video is at the Sheriff's Department under Title 34 of the Code of Federal Regulations, in regards to subpoenas, the school may disclose the information request only if the school district makes a reasonable effort to notify the parent of the order of subpoena in advance of compliance, so that the parent of the eligible student may seek protective action. It has been Mr. Atwater's position I can't see the video because it's an educational record of more than one student. If there was a subpoena request in the video, then FERPA was violated because I wasn't notified. I don't believe any of the other parents were notified before complying with this subpoena. If there was not a subpoena issued, then release of this video without consent of all parties involved is also a violation of FERPA. Either way, it was violated. Now, in light of recent events involving a teacher violating the Code of Ethics, I believe it was Standard 10, professional conduct, for a Facebook post, you would think that Mr. Atwater would abide by those standards and hold the administrators to those standards as well, but that has not happened. Standard 4, honesty. No, that's not happened. Standard 7, confidential information, has been given out without consent or without even notification. Failure to make a required report. And I think if we look down, you report if there's a violation of Code of Ethics. Not been done. Standard 10, professional conduct. An educator shall demonstrate conduct that follows generally recognized professional standards and preserves the dignity and integrity of the teaching profession. Not happen. In closing, the behavior of the superintendent and those under his direction is a disgrace and embarrassment to the community. Not only have at least 4 standards in the Code of Ethics been violated, but violations of FERPA have occurred. The blatant disregard for the Code of Ethics for educators and FERPA has created a very real possibility this school system will be investigated by the Georgia Professional Standards Commission, along with the U.S. Department of Education's Family Compliance Office. And my biggest concern of all in all of this is my child's well-being every day I send him to school, especially going forward. If administrators will go so far as to have a parent escorted out by the resource officer for asking questions, lie about events involving my child, go to my child's classes, stand there and stare at him in the lunchroom, demand an attendance meeting for 5 unexcused absences, and then at the last minute they cancel the meeting because they figured out that he really didn't have 5 unexcused absences, show favoritism when deciding punishment, and the superintendent making threats of referring things to law enforcement. I have to wonder just how far some members of the administration will go in retaliation. What price will my child have to pay for my statements here tonight? Members of the board, with the exception of Mr. Barr, as you've not been here, you've been aware of this issue with the video for several weeks now and remain silent, and frankly, that speaks volumes to me. I sincerely hope that going forward you will start doing what you were elected to do and not continue to allow misconduct of the superintendent and certain administrators to continue. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Rutland. Glad to stand before you tonight and report. Of course, all bills are paid at this point. We have on track with our budget. Looking at our budget, we look at our general fund first, general ledger here. Ending fund balance this month at $11.2 million. That is, about where we where we would track it for this time of year with property taxes being collected and still having remainder of the year plus accrued salaries to cover throughout the month of August. So looking at that, of course, our property taxes, we usually like to look at those, $671,052.72. That's about 80% of our total budgeted collection, or that it brings our cumulative collection to a little over $14 million, which is about 80% of our total collection budgeted. This time last year, we were at about 83%. So we've had conversations with the tax commissioner's office, and they're kind of seeing the same thing at this point, that it's lagging a little bit from last year. But overall, 80% is pretty good. Looking down a little bit, our title ad valorem, of course, we usually take a look at that just as a tracking, $82,548.84. Brings our total cumulative to $434,644, which is about 72%. Obviously, in the previous year, we didn't have a budgeted amount, so it's hard to compare percentage to budget. But if we compare last year's number to this year's budget, we'd only collected 42%, and we're at 72% this year. So, and that was something that we knew was coming. Obviously, with title ad valorem, the more as the years pass, the more folks that are getting newer vehicles, the numbers were going to increase, and we knew that. Any questions regarding the general fund before we move to SPLOST? Looking over at our SPLOST collection, this is we're for the month of January, $814,566. That's the first time in right at 2 years that we've topped the $800,000. Now we usually do, if you'll look at January of 14, we were at just under $750,000. We usually do see an uptick in January. Obviously, the holiday season with SPLOST collections run a month behind. So this is technically December revenues that we're seeing here. So, but our 12-month average is $726,000, a little better than that. So we are tracking, a little ahead of what we have planned for. So looking at that, fairly good news there. Looking forward at the SPLOST. And any questions on that or the general fund or anything else the board would like to ask, I'll be glad to discuss.
The averages, we talked about it being about 700 was what we were budgeting. Have we
Mhm.
done any, because we're coming up, I think, about halfway or just over halfway through this referendum, determined that we're going to do more things than we originally thought, or we're holding for a month?
What we typically do is we're tracking our remaining unallocated portion, which we would then utilize for future renovations and so forth to meet the obligations of the referendum. So as the numbers change, of course, some things we end up having to take care of that we didn't anticipate, but we do track those numbers to make sure that we're, not only in line with what we've budgeted, but that we also are looking out in the future, to make sure that we don't, obviously there's a limit on the SPLOST, so forth. So we are tracking all of that.
Okay, will entertain a motion to approve the financial and SPLOST report.
So moved.
Second.